Welcome to San Diego Integral, March 8th, 2025. Our topic today, the Lumina Process and Transforming Relational Ruptures, presented by Alexander Love.
Welcome to San Diego Integral. I'm Tom Habib, and I'm a member of the San Diego Integral leadership team. We have an exciting presentation today. Alexander Love is with us, and he's going to be speaking on the Lumina Process, Transforming Relational Ruptures. We all have familiarity with ruptures in relationships. We will begin shortly, but I first want to mention that we're recording this meeting. If you prefer not to be seen on video, you can just turn off your camera. Although we do like to see your faces and the interaction it promotes. The link to the recording will be posted on Meetup a day or two after the event and on San Diego Integral's YouTube channel, thanks to our Jerry Golick, who gets it all together. Also, you can find our future event in our website at san diegointegral.org or on our meetup page. We're also on Facebook. The advantage of joining one of these groups is you'll be automatically notified when a new event is added. We don't sell your email. We don't do anything nefarious like that. If you have any questions or comments about these meetings, you're welcome to contact one of the leadership team and ask. Complaints go to Jerry, positive comments go to me. Only kidding. Okay. So as we said, today's topic is the Lumina Process, Transforming Relational Rupture, and introducing our esteemed guest speaker, Alexander Love, will be Eloy. Take it away, Eloy.
Hey, hi. We're pleased to introduce you to Alexander Love, if you don't know him already. And we want to welcome Alexander to San Diego Integral. Alexander is a developmental coach, acupuncturist, and international facilitator who blends coaching. Oh, I'm trying to read and I'm trying to do two screens here. Sorry. Coaching Eastern wisdom and the developmental research to create deep, lasting transformation. Is the creator of the Lumina Process, a powerful parts work coaching and modality that helps uncover and heal hidden roots of suffering. A senior facilitator at the Newfield Network, Alexander co-leads their U.S. and advanced Chilean coaching training programs. Passionate about wholeness and human potential, he's dedicated to helping people embody their fullest potential. And who can't use that, huh? So welcome, Alexander. Let's give him a big hand or a wave or something. So take it away, Alexander.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, everyone. Really glad to be here with all of you. And yeah, I look forward to spending some time together and exploring some new territory. What I'll do is I'll introduce uh, some distinctions, and this will set us up to be able to go into a practice together. We'll have a couple breakouts to give an opportunity for everybody to engage with each other, and there'll also be time throughout for any questions or comments that come up. I'd love to hear your voices too, and get a feel for you and what's alive. If possible, if you can turn your cameras on, I love that, because then I'm looking at real human beings, um, rather than imagining you behind a dark square with your name on it. And why don't we begin with just a brief centering, just so we can arrive here together, um, go on a little journey together. How about we start by wiggling your toes a little bit, and just even you can even press into the floor and feel what it's like to experience yourself in space. Noticing where your sits bones are making contact with your chair if you're sitting. Noticing how, as we do that as a group, there's the awakening of a stillness that starts to embrace us here. And so from here, within that stillness, we can bring our attention up to our heart center and just notice what it's like to be you in this moment with a heart. Noticing any places of discomfort, any challenging emotions, positive, unchallenging emotions. Just kind of doing a little survey of what parts of you are here in your awareness. Whatever you find, you can go ahead and do an inner smile. Where you're smiling to these aspects of you, these places within you, and sensing the radiance, the sunshine that's produced when you look inside and you smile gently. Noticing how your experience changes as you do that. And seeing if there's any other parts of you that are present that would like some of that sunshine. Just kind of welcoming in your experience in this moment. And sending some inner smile, inner sunshine to whatever you find. Noticing how the stillness now has a little bit more warmth to it. And so finally, we can bring all of us, we can bring our attention to our heart center again. And let's just imagine that we're all in a circle, and go ahead and just send a beam of connection into the center of that circle. It's a miracle that we can be here with technology like this, getting to explore together and learn together, and just sensing the beauty in that, and that we're not just on a TV screen on our laptops. We're actually deeply connected to each other. That's possible. So with that said, so glad that we're all here together. And what we're going to explore today is we're going to take a dive into the world of parts of the self. Um, for me, in my history of being human, um, parts work has been an invaluable tool. About 28 years ago, I lost my father as a result of gun violence. And as you can imagine, I was a 20-year-old young human being. At that point, I began floundering through the world, trying to sort out what do we do with overwhelming pain? Why do we hurt each other? And what do we do with our suffering? Is there any purpose in pain? Is there something else possible beyond just agony and collapse? And I began as an acupuncturist, and I learned all these things, and I was able to find some degree of peace that would be very short-lived. But once I discovered parts work, shadow work, that was a game changer, because now there was a way to work with my interior in such a way that it wasn't just like a momentary relaxation experience that then just led into more agony after that wore off in a couple of days. But there was a way to actually work through something to a point of resolution. Beyond that, more importantly, I learned through some of these tools how pain can be a profound doorway into awakening, into growing up developmentally, and into sort of accessing deeper and deeper dimensions of wisdom. So I hope to bring some of this here in hopes that it will support you. I will mention, I don't want to leave this part out. About a year ago, I met with the man who killed my dad, and we had a 3-hour restorative justice conversation. We've met 4 times now since. The last time we spoke was a couple weeks ago. It was the 20th anniversary of the day that it all went down. And this man, who most people would consider a dangerous, hardened criminal, that would be our sort of initial way we might describe this person if we sort of heard the superficial story. Well, he told me he loved me when we said goodbye. He's aware of his deep goodness. He knows, sometimes he says frequently that he and I are the same, which in one way sounds absurd, but in another way is so deeply, exquisitely beautiful, because he recognizes that what he means by that is that we're both trying to do good in the world. He's in prison for the rest of his life, and he tries to do good there. Now, in order for conversations like that to happen, we need to have tools to be able to heal some of the agony, the pain, the anger, whatever it is that's inside. And that leads to a road of forgiveness, like real forgiveness, not lip surface. So anyway, I wanted to offer that as some context so that as we go into learning some distinctions, there's weight behind it. There's real human possibilities behind it. And so that's why we're here. And thank you for all the love. I see the hearts, but I feel the love. And I'm soaking in that. We can soak in that together. So what I'm going to do is share my screen with you. What I'd like to do is remind you that depending on how you like to watch slides and presentations, there's usually a vertical line that you can slide. Usually it comes on and the slides are really, really big and I'm really, really small, you can keep it that way. But if you'd rather see me in a different size and the slides smaller, usually, I don't know if you'll find it, but if you look for it, usually you can slide it around a little bit based on what works for you. Now, words give birth to worlds. When we, language is a generative, creative sense organ, we could say. And for me, when I was in my early 20s, I discovered Chinese medicine, and I found that the language is so beautiful. It gave me a language for understanding humanity. And one of the beautiful things about the Chinese language is that the characters are symbols. They're not as fixed. You know, when we have a letter D and an O and a G, it means dog, and like that's the beginning and end of it. Well, here the images, they could be one thing and they're kind of something else, and they're metaphoric, they're symbolic. It gives us room to dream into what we're learning in a different way. And so I'm going to share along the way some of these characters to help us live into some of these territories. So we begin with this character here, which is the character for awakening. We'll see on the left, this is a condensed character for the heart. Now, it should also be mentioned that the heart and mind, it's the same character. So I won't go into that right now, but you can play with, well, that's interesting. The heart and the mind are the same symbol. So we have this notion of there's the heart, and then on the right side, there are these one character that has two different aspects to it. This is the character for I, or me, as a whole. So you see there's the little square at the bottom, and then there's this other thing above it. Together, that means I, or me. And if we break this down further, we can see that the lower character is the character for mouth. But as I said before, we're thinking metaphorically, it's really something like a mouth. And a mouth is a passageway. It's a portal through which something can move through. Now, above that, we have the number 5. Now, in the Western sort of minded thinking, when we use numbers, we're speaking more quantitatively. Well, 5, I've got 5 apples. I've got 4 chickens. But in this way of depicting the number 5, we're actually speaking more about qualities of movement. In an earlier iteration of this, earlier evolution of this character, it looks more like this. It looks like the Roman numeral 10. And what this is showing is it's showing that the 2 horizontal lines are representative of heaven and earth. So earth is reflective of diversity, proliferation of variation. Earth is symbolic of cyclical phases like birth, growth, maturation, fruition, withering, decline, back to the root. And so just in that lower line, there's an implication of all of these things. Earth is the place where all of this stuff is growing and evolving and unfolding. And in that, from some of you, it can appear that there's a lot of separation occurring. There's lots of stuff. There's bugs, there's stones, there's crystals, there's trees, there's bad attitudes, there's the political party we like and the political party we don't like. There's all of these distinctions existing on earth. But then yet the upper line represents heaven. This is symbolic of something unbroken. We might say the timeless, boundless, unbroken dimensions of existence. And then in between these two, we have all things, everything. You could think of this like the 4 directions, right? Every direction, all the stuff, all the things, everything between heaven and earth, but it's revolving around a center. But in this context, center is not like the core of an apple. Center is the way the fabric, the threads of your clothes are the center of your clothes. Or the grain in the wood is the center of the wood. So in this case, what we have is everything between heaven and earth, including heaven and earth, revolving around a center that is a fabric. So in one way, if we simplify all that, we can say that the number 5 is representative of multiplicity, interdependency, many parts that are all sharing one fabric. So with all of that, we can say that this character as a whole is saying that the heart-mind, the heart is a portal through which we can discover the self. Remember, this whole character on the right, it means I or me. So awakening is this experience or expression where the heart becomes a portal through discovering the multiplicity of who we are. Now we can look at this, the way we're going to look at it today is in the context of parts of the self. We could take it further though, and we look at it from a cosmocentric perspective. And we could say that awakening is, the heart becomes a portal through which we discover that we are everything between heaven and earth, including heaven and earth. Now, for our purposes, we're gonna focus on what we might call the subtle collective. The subtle collective is our inner ecology. So if you're familiar with traditions like internal family systems, they're talking about, oh, there's these many parts of the self that are part of an inner system. I like the word ecology. It's just a little softer. I mean, I don't mind the word system, but I don't know, somehow ecology feels, there's something organic in it that I like. So this means that we are not a single thing like we might believe. So very often I'll hear someone share a sentence and they'll say, my deeper purpose is to change the world, but I'm terrified and I never want to leave the house, but I'm going to force myself to leave the house. But what I really want to do is I want to just scroll on Netflix, but I'm going to force myself to stop because I want to make myself realize my potential, but I don't believe I can. Right? And so in that one sentence, it sounds like from one view that it's coming from one thing, but actually it's a bunch of different parts of the self that are taking turns constructing this longer sentence. This is why we experience inner conflict. There's one part of me that wants to go do the thing, and there's another part of me that's scared to get out from underneath the covers. And those parts of us can get into a kind of conflict with each other. Okay, so the take home is that we are a multiplicity, and that multiplicity, in our context today, that multiplicity is comprised of many parts of the self. Part of this inner ecology is developed through internalizing our world. So a lot of times parts work traditions focus on the parts that look like me, right? Someone says, well, I'm working with my inner child. Of course, we have many inner children, but sometimes that's how we talk about it. Oh, I'm with my inner child. So the implication is often I'm working with parts of me they look like me. Maybe it's a younger part of me or an older part of me, teenage part of me. But what I want to invite, and this is a little different than some parts work traditions, is that this inner ecology also includes the people that have had big impact on us. I have a part of me that looks like Herbert, the man who killed my dad. I have a part of me that looks like my mother. I have many parts of me that look like my mother. I have many parts of me that look like my father. If I have friends, or if there are politicians that have had a strong impact in your life, we have parts of us that look like that because we absorb the world. Another way to say this is that we can probably easily get on board with the idea that we have all of the archetypes inside of us. What I'm saying here is that not only do we have all the archetypes inside of us, but we have personalized those archetypes based on how other people have expressed them. So it's not just the warrior archetype, but I have a friend who's a particular quality and way of being a warrior. If they've had a big impact on me, I have that inside as a part of my inner ecology, for better or for worse, right? The abuser, we've internalized that. This is going to be important when we look at how to work with relational ruptures through parts work. This is going to be a key factor. I've already said not all of our parts look like you. So what I'd like to do is just pause here for a moment and just hear from you if there's any questions that you have or comments that you have just before we go into the next thing. I want to just see if there's anything cooking around there that wants to be spoken. You can put things in chat. You can also raise your hand.
Make sure you unmute yourself.
Okay, good. Fantastic. So what I'd like to do now is I want to go a little further into talking about what constitutes a part. And to do this, I want to explore with you something that I like to call the prism. If you're familiar with Ken Wilber's integral post-metaphysics, this will have some familiarity. If you are not familiar with that, don't worry about it. I'm going to explain. So the prism is, you could say, the deep structure of who we are. It begins with one big, long, fancy word: epistemology. This is this represents the lenses through which we make meaning. So right now, everybody on this call, we are all looking through our own filters. We're all looking through our own goggles. We are knowing the world. Epistemology means the study of knowing. We are all knowing the world through a particular set of lenses. Every part of the self has a perspective through which it's viewing the world. So if there's a part of you that's 3 years old and it feels abandoned, that part is looking through a 3-year-old lens that has the sensation of abandonment in it. Now, at the same time, we have another fancy word: ontology. Ontology is the study of being. It's really the question of what is reality? What exists? Does Santa Claus exist? Do fairies exist? Does a cheesesteak exist? So at the same time that we are looking through a particular lens, there's an arising reality. It's not the full reality, but some aspect of reality pops out and it exists for us. So if I'm a 3-year-old, if there's a 3-year-old part of me that sees through the lens of abandonment, I'm going to see a world that is consistent with a world filled with abandonment. If I am angry, an angry person lives in an angry world. A hopeless person lives in a hopeless world. And we have different traditions where that will often favor one of these two things. Oh, it's all about ontology. There's a fixed world out there. You just need to trip over it and measure it right, and then you're going to find the truth. And then you have other traditions that say, no, it's all in the eyes of the beholder. What I'm saying here is that these can't be torn apart. Reality is going to open along with the opening of our lenses. Reality is going to shorten as the lens shortens. Now, at the same time that we're looking through filters, we're looking through certain kind of glasses, and at the same time that we're in relationship to an arising reality, there's also another fancy word: sympoiesis. This means becoming with. It's a way in which we are creating together. If you spell sympoetics wrong, it means making poetry together. We are becoming with each other. So right now, even though I'm doing most of the talking, your quality of presence, your interest, everything you've brought with you is bringing something in particular out of me. And hopefully I'm supporting something to arise within you, that we are interdependent and we are becoming together. So sympoiesis includes the ways that we interact with each other. It includes the practices that we engage with. This can also include looking through a microscope, right? That's a way of interacting with the world. So I look through a particular lens. I decide to create a microscope. With that microscope, I begin interacting with the world in such a way that all of a sudden, boom, the cellularity of existence pops forward. Now it's real. I can see it. So every part of the self has a way in which it makes meaning through particular lenses, sees a particular reality, and has preferences for how it wants to interact with what it finds. All of this is happening together. Now, every single part of us has a different configuration of that. And in the center, what we have is evolution's engine. All of this is in a process of perpetual becoming, perpetual unfolding. I like to call this jokingly the three longs and a wiggle, because epistemology, ontology, and sympoiesis is a mouthful, and then evolution's engine, it wiggles. So it's shorthand, right? You can call it the prism, you can call it the three longs and a wiggle. And this is really, to me, the deep structure of any being. Right now we're focused on the human being. Now, every single part of us is going to have its own prism. Even though these parts are connected to a larger whole, when they feel disconnected, the sense that they're all their own prism gets accentuated. I have a 3-year-old part of me that sees the world in a 3-year-old way. I have a 15-year-old part of me that sees the world and experiences reality in a 15-year-old way, a 20-year-old way, and so on. Okay. So what I'd like to do is see again if there's any clarifying questions. This could be a good time to go in a breakout so that you have some time to just have a discussion about what's coming up for you so far, what's alive for you. So what I'll do is I'll just say we'll have a breakout in a minute or so, but first I want to see if there's any questions or comments that you guys have.
I'll get it going, Alexander. What strikes me on this is that we can agree upon anything because, I mean, it just seems so fluid depending upon each of our developmental history and how we make sense of what we observe, that it's extraordinary. And I'm curious about if at the center of all of this interpretation is evolution's engine. Could we say part of that is what Plato said, that what drives us is the good, the true, and the beautiful?
Mhm. Yeah. So this gets us into a whole beautiful sort of territory of which I'll sort of touch on today. And if we can always come back if you want me to come back and we can explore other aspects. But what I would say is that evolution's engine are the most primordial necessities, the primordial seeds required to get a cosmos going. And there's five of those seeds. And we already know this. It's in the yin yang symbol. So the Tao Te Ching says the Tao gives birth to the number 1, which gives birth to the number 2, which gives birth to the number 3, which gives birth to the 10,000 things. And then, of course, we can say that then the 10,000 things are now interdependent through one fabric. We learned about the number 5. So we can say that evolution's engine is essentially these 5 gestures that are really one gesture, 5 permutations of one gesture. We have the receptive, the yin. We have the active, which is the yang. We have the line in between the yin and yang. This is the reciprocal. This is the movement between these extreme polarities. And then we have the dots. This is the interreflection or the interpenetration, which means I look at you and I see a mirror of myself, and you look at me and you see a mirror of yourself. And then all of that, the number 5 is the ink that draws the whole yin yang symbol. It's the fabric plus everything else that's already been. So all of that to say, Tom, to me, that's what evolution's engine is. But then if we look into the qualities of those 5 gestures, we immediately see that it gives rise to the true, the good, and the beautiful. That those are sort of, we could say that those 5 gestures are like more fundamental than the true, the good, and the beautiful, but but very soon, like instantly, the true, the good, and the beautiful emerge from that engine. Yeah. Yeah. Nish.
Hi, Alexander. Hi, Alexander. Thank you very much. It's a really beautiful picture there. You said earlier that this relates to Ken Wilber's integral post-metaphysics.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that epistemology, sympathesis, and ontology are effectively the I, the we, and the it of the integral model? And must these 3 always arise together? Must they always be present in any given occasion, like we see in integral theory?
I think that we could loosely play with the I and the we and the it in that way. At the same time, there is an epistemology of the we. So I would want to be careful about, I think it's a beautiful exercise to kind of explore it that way. But I think it's probably not 100% always like perfect fit. My sense is that these things can't be pulled apart. And I think this is one of the things that Wilber brilliantly touched on. He has epistemology and ontology, but then he has methodology. I've just replaced it with sympoiesis and then found a place for those, what in Wilber's world language would be like the involutionary pre-givens. I've just simplified it to 5 and put it in the center as the fabric. But I think one of the things that Wilber brilliantly pointed out is that typically we try to pull these things apart, but that at a certain view, they can't be. And that doesn't mean that that's the only way to see it, because then it messes up the whole point of the model, which is that as a perspective sees through a certain thing, a very real reality emerges. So we can't dismiss and say, oh, well, no, you can't pull them apart. From a certain stage perspective, you sure can, and people do. What I'm inviting here is that we see what it's like to feel it as something that cannot be pulled apart. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Kathleen. Yeah, Kathleen.
This is amazing to look at things from this different angle. And then I am really hearing what you're saying, and just looking at the drawing with the circles, and you saying that, like, this isn't what you said, but they're like lenses. The larger they get, the larger evolution's, the space for evolution's engine is.
Yeah.
Right. I love that part of it. Like always being interested in evolution and change and things not being stuck. Like the more we can, like, gives us a purpose for opening the lenses.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, and this again would be a conversation for another day, but if we leaned our discussion towards specifically looking at the prism in relationship to development, stages of development, there's ways to see how evolution's engine is the primordial shape maker for all of the stages of development, leaving room for an infinite amount of cosmic creativity. That would be another thing we could explore at some point. Today, the sort of the invitation is that we kind of like, we're like leaning into that each part of the self has this prism. And then, like you said, evolution's engine is in that fabric. So this brings us into a process view, which is that we aren't a stick in a stream, we're the stream. And anything that feels stagnant is really repetitive motion. It's not a noun, it's a captured verb, which gives room for what I think you're speaking to here, which is that transformation and transmutation is possible. This gets us into the territories of inner alchemy, where we're, instead of transmuting lead into gold, which is external alchemy, we're finding places in ourselves that we might deem potential. We often don't call it that. We call it, I hate my life. But there's some inner experience that's coarse or distorted or ouchy, right? And then we engage in sort of an internal relationship that allows for transmutation to occur, and then those deeper potentials are born. Beautiful.
Alexander, we have a question from Marjorie.
Yeah.
Does my sense of various parts of myself change or move based on my relationships, conditions, or circumstances beyond my control?
Right. This is the sympoiesis, right? And so what I mean by that is we are context-dependent beings, that there are various aspects of ourselves. Some of them are foregrounded, some of them are backgrounded. And as soon as we're in a new relational context, different parts of the self move forward, right? I haven't said the word bro once yet. I have a 15-year-old daughter who often says, yo, bro, what's up, bro? And so there's different aspects of me that are going to come forward in that relational dynamic. Whereas here in this moment, I feel, and I don't know how each of you feel individually, but I feel in this space this kind of inspiring state in the field that I've shared some of these distinctions with other groups, and it's been a different feeling. None of them bad. But here there's this sort of uplifting, inspiratory kind of wow. So that's bringing other aspects of me out. So yes, absolutely. We are sympoetic, becoming with the world, becoming with each other. And as soon as the constellation of what the we is changes, the inner constellation of our inner ecology sort of foregrounds, backgrounds changes. Yeah, beautiful. So why don't we go into a breakout? What I'd like to do is invite that you have an open conversation. So you'll have about 15 minutes. And it's an opportunity to explore what is arising for you so far. What's alive for you? It could be your interest in ideas. It could be the arising of emotional territories, other state territories. Whatever is alive for you. It's an opportunity for us to engage with each other and all have a voice. Okay, so whenever you're ready, you can open up the rooms.
Breakout sessions are not recorded.
Okay, good. Now I can see you and my slides. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what, maybe hear from a few of you, just what came up for you, what's alive, what's cooking.
Well, I wouldn't have thought about this except for the fact of being in my group, but the wiggle, it's true. This model has movement in it, and that sort of came alive for us in our group. It wasn't just, static definitions. There was a livingness about it that now I understand why you said, and a wiggle. So
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's the idea. One of my dreams, desires, how do we take the depth and complexity of something like integral theory and just infuse it with being alive and human, so that it's not just I'm staring at a page thinking about ideas, but I can find how these ideas are actually more than ideas, and they are moving us. We're alive and living them. I think it really helps open the potentials of some of these insights. gives them more meaning. And then we don't have to remember what we read because it's something that's alive. It's alive. Anything else before we move forward? Okay. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, hello everyone. Yeah, in terms of that question of how do we infuse that aliveness, one thing that I notice is, feeling it. What is the risk to bring a fuller self
Yeah.
into certain settings? Because I often calibrate based on my expectations and projections of what can land with
Yes.
any given context. And I so love this concept of the sympoiesis that you're bringing in, because I feel how I'm affected by those who are with me. And to the extent that we're leaning into that shared space together, it makes something possible that was otherwise impossible. And I love that feeling. And part of it involves, and this is the part that I wanted to name now, part of it involves a bit of a risk to the part of me that identifies with a certain kind of person that wants to be intellectually respected, don't be too flowery or whatever. And that willingness to stretch a little bit into these spaces of being, risking being a little more poetic, risking having a little more emotionality to what I'm doing, it infuses the space. And I've so appreciated, Alexander, how much you've done that over the course of the hour or so that we've been together, that you have infused so much. And as I feel that, then that comes through me, and that we get this, kind of
Yes.
upward cycle of impacting one another that way, that something happens and comes alive here. So just wanting to name that and to feel that and invite the risk of playing in that territory more.
Oh, I love it. I love it, Eric. And to me, what I hear, I mean, I hear a lot of things in what you're saying, but the one thing I want to just speak to is I hear an invitation for all of us right now to lean in just a little bit more. However we are leaned in, to let our hearts lean in a little bit more, to feel that there is something happening here that we don't even have to have words for, but there's something really beautiful happening here that we can lean our hearts into. And somehow, the more we do that, something continues to happen that we have no words for. And so we can keep learning things, and but there's this other thing that we're learning too, about possibilities around how we can be together and what's possible. So thank you. So as you can see, I'm about to claim that we're like an avocado. This is because while we've now looked at one aspect of a part of the self, this sort of deep structure, where we have a sense of, I have a knowing lens that is co-born with a reality that then also has an interactive becoming with dimension that's being grown through the evolutionary impulse or evolution's engine. At the same time that that's all occurring, we also have a depth dimension, skin, blood, and bones. And every part of the self also has a depth dimension. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce a layers model that is going to set us up for our practice, so that when we work with the parts, we have some shared distinctions around what different aspects exist in a part. Now, there's 4 layers. I'm really going to emphasize 3. I will share the 4th one a little bit, mostly because if I know that if you all knew that there was 4 layers and I only did 3, you're going to ask me what that 4th one is anyway. And so I'll go over it, but really for this practice, for our purposes tonight, we really just need the skin of the avocado, the mushy part, and the seed. This model comes from one of my teachers. He's a An 88th generation Taoist priest and doctor. Can you imagine 88 generations? So it comes from there. And I love it because it's born in a medical tradition, which means there's an automatic sense of embodiment around it. There's a lot of models that we've all learned that have different levels of depth, and they're all beautiful in their own way. I like this because it's like it's stuck to our bodies. There's an interiority and an exteriority that are wedded together. So this first layer, you can see on the far right up here, it says Wei Qi, and these are the characters for Wei Qi. Now, Qi, each of our layers, except the fourth one, is going to have this character Qi in it. Now, we've all heard the word Qi. Most people in the West translate it as energy. This is a bit of a mistranslation. Energy is a type of Qi, but Qi really, it really means interaction, movement, dynamism. So when you say, oh, I've got deficient heart Qi, it means that I'm lacking in the capacity for my heart to do heart-like interactive things. It's not necessarily just a substance, like I've got enough of it or I don't have enough of it. It's really about an interaction, right? So, okay, so Wei Qi. So what's this character for Wei? So I'll invite you, as I'm sharing this layer, feel your skin. See what happens if you bring yourself to your exterior, to the surfaces. We see here that there's this character. It means temporary or to walk or in circulation. If you've ever heard of the term the 5 elements, this character means elements. It's just element is a mistranslation again. It's really like 5 movements. This character shows 1 foot followed by another foot, right? There's a sort of implication of motion or circulation. And then in between that, they put this other character, which is like 2 people pulling on something. It means tanned leather, and it means to surround. You can look at this earlier iteration of this character as a whole, and it shows feet that are walking around the outer rim of something. Okay, so with Wei Qi, we're looking at the skin of the avocado. It relates to your skin, your surface of your being. And we have this notion of there's something circulating, or there's a Qi, there's an interaction, the way in which we interact with the surface. This character is going to relate to pre-thought spontaneity. So somebody throws a ball at you and you respond without thinking, right? Think about athletes. They're using Wei Qi a lot. There's a lot of non-thinking, responding sort of gestures. This can also include autonomic protection, such as your autonomic nervous system, right? So that means that something occurs in your environment and you fight, you flight, you freeze, you fawn, you play dead, some sort of automatic response to keep you safe. This also has psychological aspects too, right? So you feel threatened by your boss, you feel threatened by your neighbor. We have psychological responses that are sort of autonomic, reactionary, sort of shut down, lock the doors sort of responses. Similarly, this layer in us can relate to the ways in which we are unconsciously habituated. The surface layer, the first layer, it's pretty much unconscious. You're not asking your immune system to identify COVID-19. You're not having your pores open and close with your own awareness. It's not that people can't do this, but we typically don't do this. When somebody throws something at you, all of these things, they're automatic. And so this can become habituated responses, right? When someone says, well, you're just going to have to deal with me. That's just who I am. It's not really who they are. It's how they've become conditioned in an unconscious way. It's sort of like it's stuck. in that way. One of the ways you can get to know Wei Qi, this first layer, is go partner dancing. Take like a salsa class where you have to meet with, they mix you up. You don't stay with the same person the whole time, even if you want to, right? They make you shift partners. And so you'll dance with one person and it's like dancing with a Volvo, like the old Volvos, right? Sort of you dance with another person and it's sort of this reed-like empty sort of quality. Then there's another person where you're dancing and it's like this. All of those things are not conscious. Just like when you shake someone's hand. You ever shake someone's hand and it feels like they're pushing you away? You ever get that? You're like shaking and they're like, it's really great to meet you. And you're like, I think you're just pushing me away right now. They're not doing that on purpose. It's part of their unconscious first layer or Wei Qi layer habituation. Okay, so that's the first layer. Now, let's just take a moment and feel what it's like again to have a surface. Feel the quality in our group. It should feel kind of sparkly, like the surface of the ocean. There's literally, when it's frothing, there's a kind of aliveness. You might think that I'm really animated. It's not just because I'm inspired, it's because I'm in the Wei Qi. Wei Qi is also your host-hostess face. Hi, it's so nice to see you. Come on in. Isn't the weather beautiful? Right? You're interacting with the surface. Now let's contrast this with the next layer. We're going to notice a quality of difference in the field. You could bring your attention into your circulatory system, feeling your blood. This is the mushy part of the avocado. Now, we can see here, so again, we have the character for qi, but then we also have this other character, which means it's the way you say it is yin. And at the top, you can see these are two little fires. They look like fires. There's two little fires, and it's above a settlement or a palace or a cave. It implies that there's safety on the outside because there's Wei Qi, but you're on the inside, and there's warmth. This is often called nutritive qi. And nutritive qi is being co-constructed for the purposes of nourishment. So we're in the conversation here around digestion, digesting life. We're digesting life and we're extracting nourishment or extracting meaning. This is one of the ways we become with the world. We digest the world. We're all right now, we're sitting in an encampment or a settlement in this moment together. We're sitting inside of something and we're digesting life together and we're creating meaning. This is what you do when you eat food, and then that meaning is the nutrient richness in your blood. Or psychologically, it's what we're doing together right now, where we have conversations. You just went in a breakout and you're having conversations together, exploring meaning, digesting life, and it can create this quality of warmth and nourishment and intimacy. So it makes sense then that the second layer is going to relate to social construction. We're socially constructing before we recognize it. So 7-year-olds are socially constructing reality, but they're not going to say, well, geez, that collective meaning making that we just that just unfolded in the classroom was profound. Like, they're not going to be aware of social construction, but nonetheless, we're doing it. This is the territory of intimacy and vulnerability. This is also the territory of narratives, stories. The stories we tell ourselves, the collective narratives that we share, the cultural drifts. Cultural drifts is another way of talking about a meme. A meme is a socially transmitted gene. So there's a certain sort of set of values, belief systems, worldviews that we hold our children in, and it pours into them. The cultural drifts pour into them. They become involved in the children that are sort of soaking in it. Or right now, we're all part of a larger cultural set of conversations that we're receiving. We may choose to reject some or accept some, but nonetheless, we're soaking it in. Now, this second layer is also related to emotion. It's related to what we're calling here stagnant blood fruit. This is because I'm dramatic. In Chinese medicine, we call this blood stagnation. But I'll explain why I want to call it stagnant blood fruit instead. So we're going through life, we're digesting life, and then all of a sudden something occurs that's too hard for us to fully digest. There's something that's too painful to bear. In Chinese medicine, the blood is understood. It's sort of where our stories are and our experience, part of our experiences and our memory. And they also say that our blood has awareness in it. The way layer, it's unconscious. The blood has more consciousness. So we're going along and there's something we experience that's too much to bear. So what we do is they say we pull the awareness out of it. And this creates numbness. This creates a walling off of experience. So now we don't remember our childhood. We don't remember all the details because we took our awareness out. This can create, physiologically, this can manifest as a blood clot. It's literally stagnant blood. But psychologically, it's a walled off experience or parts that have been walled off. Now, why I like to call them blood fruit is because fruits have seeds. And so inside those walled off experiences of pain, there are these little seeds of potential. We'll get to the seed layer in a minute. Okay, so this is some of the territory of this second layer. And you can get a feel for that too, the warmth, the vulnerability and intimacy in it. And the moments when it feels too vulnerable to stay present to. So we have to wall those things off. I'll just leave a moment for a pause. We could just take a deep breath together. And then we'll move on to the third layer. So you could say that the third layer, at least for our purposes, relates to the bones of your heart, the deep essence of your heart. So again, we have this character for Qi. And we have this other character for Yuan. It shows water that's gushing from a rocky mountain. But this water is pure. It's clear. It's pure in the way that the sunrise is pure. So these pure waters, these essential waters, they're bubbling out of the side of this mountain. In this case, the mountain is your heart. These waters are bubbling out of your heart. Now, we have an individual aspect of this seed layer, your deep essence of being. This is where purposefulness exists. This is where that sense of I must, right? So when each of us have this experience of, yes, I could come up with reasons for why I have to do the thing I'm doing. The seed layer is the I must. You know, like I'm writing this book, and I could say I want to help people. Of course I want to help people. But the deepest reason why I write is because I have to, not a should. But there's something bubbling out of that mountain that just says, this is your thing to do. But there's also a collective aspect of this. This is our deeply good, and I am claiming, I will be transparent, I am claiming that we are deeply good. Tom was talking about the true, the good, and the beautiful. This is the layer where that is what we find when we go there. This is a sea of virtue. All of the virtues exist here as a pluripotent sea. What that means is that whatever virtues are required in the moment, in any given context, will come forward. And briefly, I'll just show what I mean by virtue. This is the character, where a set of eyes looks in all directions and they see no deviation related to what is arising in the heart and coming through action. So virtue is when we look in all directions with a complete set of eyes, we see no deviation related to what is arising in the heart and that is visible through action. Because this seed layer of our being, it is not only a sea of virtue that gives to the world, but it also imbues us with a quality of being. It imbues us with a quality of being that makes those virtuous actions effortless. Effortless. Okay. So this is the third layer. Maybe you can feel a qualitative shift as we're exploring this from the first two. Much of our problems are first and second layer. We don't have problems here at the deep aspect of the third layer. We don't have problems here. Every hardship we've ever experienced is seen as a possibility. Not because we read it in a book and that sounds good, because you know that, right? We've all read books that say like, everything hard is a possibility, right? But if you're honest and you look in and you're like, ugh, this sucks, right? When this place is open, this third layer, what's next? Leaning towards, because it's all a part of the evolutionary process. This is the alchemizing force. So as I promised, I will briefly go through the fourth layer for now. We really just need these first three layers. I want to take us into a practice and have time for a breakout, so I'm not going to dwell on the fourth layer, but I'll show you. This is called Shen. It's often translated as spirit, but it's better if we don't know that. We can just see what it is. At the top on the left side, you'll see there's a unity line, an unbroken dimension. This is the timeless, boundless. From here comes the sun, the moon, and the stars. There's these luminous fruits that are hanging from heaven. You could say this is evolution's engine that's pouring from the timeless, boundless. But remember, the timeless, boundless doesn't have a location, so pouring from is a bit of a misnomer. From the timeless, boundless comes these primordial gestures that are seeding the world with cosmic possibility. And on the right, we see this character, which originally is a lightning bolt. When they inscribed these in the early bones, the oracle bone inscriptions were the earliest places that these words were being developed. It showed a lightning bolt. This character as a whole, Shen, its earliest iteration showed a lightning bolt striking a human being. So there's an implication of there's something descending. There's something descending. We can say that Shen is born from the ground of being. If you're familiar with Buddhism, you don't need to be, but if you are, it's the Dharmakaya, this sort of the ground of being that doesn't move. Nothing's occurred there. And then from there comes evolution's engine, the evolutionary impulse. And this is its texture, its beingness is somehow some form of primordial sound or light rays, something like that. These are our primordial gestures, our evolutionary gestures. Again, if you're familiar with Buddhism, it's the Sambhogakaya, the luminosity that's arising from the ground of being. So that's the fourth layer. It's not really a layer. It's the fabric. So what I'm wondering is if there's any questions, clarifying questions, and then what I'd like to do is take us right into a practice. But I want to make sure that these, especially the first three layers, there's a degree of clarity enough. You don't have to remember anything. But if there's any questions, clarifying questions, now would be the moment.
Alexander, can some people jump right over Wei Qi
Wei
and
Qi.
right to Yin Qi? Yin Qi, I mean.
Yeah. So a good example of this would be, have you ever been at a restaurant and then there's two people that are deeply in love and they can't stop like oozing all over each other, and then someone yells, "Get a room"? What they're basically saying is, you guys are just pouring your yin qi, your second layer, all over us. We did not sign an agreement for this to happen. Go find yourself wei qi. Go get a room. Absolutely. You'll see this a lot in high school. Like imagine some young teenage girls in high school. You often see a lot of yin qi sort of pouring out all over the place, right? So yes, you can skip over these. What we want is not to just favor the deeper ones. What we want is to have access to the whole thing. We want the whole avocado. And, with practice, you can anchor in that fourth layer and then be with all of the layers that exist together. That's what we really want. But yeah, you can look at this from a medical perspective too, Tom, where you're like, oh, that person has Wei Qi deficiency and some stagnation in their second layer, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
I'm aware though, like small talk in social interactions with people I don't know
Yeah.
seems to be Wei Qi.
Yeah.
We're walking around the periphery, feeling each other out. When I go to these integral events, we go into Yin Qi, like, I always joke, I could be taking a whiz in the bathroom and I'm exploring the metaphysical universe with somebody I just met.
Yeah, that's right. So that's a great example, Tom, of going right into Ying Qi. Ying Qi, I didn't mention, is also about cognition. It's about sort of processing and digestion. This group, remember when I was talking about that inspiration feeling and I saw many of you kind of nod? That was coming from that third layer. There's like a deeper something that's kind of rising from a mystery. So absolutely. Yep, you're right on. So let's go into a practice. So I'm just going to walk you through something, and then we'll do a last breakout where you have a chance to talk to each other a little bit. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is establish a relationship to wholeness. So just dropping into yourself. Seeing if at this moment automatically you might already have access to a place in you that is loving, curious, interested. One way to find out is to say, how do I feel about doing this practice? And if the natural first response is, oh, I'm interested, I'm curious, then just stay right there. If you hear another voice, oh, I'm nervous, or I don't know, or I'm tired, or I'm kind of out of it, or that means that there's a part standing in front of the seed. And what you can do is just invite that part to gently unblend. Unblend doesn't mean go away. It just means move to the right 2 inches or move to the left 2 inches so that there's room for this deeper bubbling light. You can ask the question again, now how do I feel about doing this practice? And you're listening for, am I hearing a part that's speaking from the first or second layer? Oh, I'm annoyed about this practice, or oh, this is going on too long, or oh, I'm scared, or I'm curious, interested. If there's another part, you can invite that part to just unblend, just step aside, stay with us. Don't want you to go away. Just to let some of that light of curiosity come through. If you still don't feel connected to wholeness, then what you can do is imagine something that generally brings up love for you, like a puppy or someone you have a really good relationship with, or something in nature that you just adore. Imagine that. Imagine if it's a person or an animal, imagine their face. Until that starts to evoke in you this quality of love or aliveness. And so then just go ahead and just let's anchor in that. Notice how it's in the field, so it's easier for us to find as individuals. Now, go ahead and think of a person that you are in conflict with or have some sort of relational rupture with. If you haven't done a lot of inner work with parts, I would not choose the hardest thing you can think of. Choose something sort of in the middle. If you've done a lot of parts work, I'll leave it to you. But think of a person that you've had some conflict with or some rupture. And just kind of bring this person in your, just kind of remember them and sort of let it bring you there to some of the feeling around conflict. And go ahead and find the part of you that feels hurt by that person. So go ahead and find the part of you that feels hurt by that person. What does this part of you look like? What's the emotional territory? How do you experience this part? Now, from wholeness, go ahead and bond with this part. Go ahead and bond with this part. Invite them to share with you their pain. Invite them to share with you their pain, and your job is to just stay connected to them from wholeness and witness them. Invite them to share even a little more. Just witness them. Just love them. Let them feel you connecting from this third layer, from this well of wholeness. Allow that bond to feel secure. You're right there. Whatever they're feeling, whatever they're saying, you're right there. Okay. So now you're going to allow this part to stay connected with you, but we're going to add another piece. Go ahead and see through this part's pain without dismissing it. Just see that seed layer in them, that deeper essence. See the wholeness that's already in the part, even as they're also hurting. Again, you can even smile at the part, sending those sunshine rays. So you can just let this part know that we're going to do something else now, but they're going to stay connected to you even as we do something else. Go ahead and somewhere else in your experience, so we can give this part of you a little bit of space from what we're about to do. Find the part of you that looks like the person you're in conflict with. Find the part of you that looks like the person you're in conflict with. What does their face look like? What's their emotional disposition? From wholeness, bond with this part of you that looks like the person that you're in conflict with. Remember, this isn't the actual person. This is what you've internalized. It's an aspect of your inner ecology. Invite them to share their pain, their experience. Your job is to witness. And from wholeness, you can do it. No problem. Continuing to invite them to talk to you, to share their feelings, to share their view, to share where they're coming from. Allowing that bond to deepen. You can begin to support this part in releasing the burdens it's been carrying, while connecting and seeing its deeper essence. This part has a seed layer too. So you're allowing the wholeness in you to connect with the wholeness in this part and supporting all of its pain to drain away, all of its burdens to drain away. Really seeing the goodness in this part, while also seeing the distortions. Those distortions can transmute or they can release. Now, before you do this next piece, if you feel like this part of you that looks like the person you've been in conflict with, if you feel like you've accessed their goodness, you can move on to the next step. If you're still kind of not sure about that, stay with bonding, stay with connecting, and don't follow along the next step. If the part of you that looks like the person you're in conflict with, if they're accessing their wholeness and they've let go of at least some of their burden, then what you can do now is bring both of these parts together. You are wholeness. You are bonded with the part that looks like the person you've been in conflict with. You are bonded with the part of you that looks like you, that felt hurt. And you bring those both parts together at whatever distance feels right. You don't have to force anything. Invite the part of you that looks like you to share its pain with the part of you that looks like the person you're in conflict with. Your job is to hold it all in wholeness, love, deep presence. Have that part share its pain. Share the impact of the hurt that has occurred. The part of you that looks like the person you've been in conflict with, that part's job is to witness and respond only from their deeper voice of goodness. When the time is right, the part of you that looks like you can share more about how it's conflicted, how it's in pain. And the other part that looks like the part of you that you've been in conflict with now responds more from that deeper place of goodness. What we're going to do is we're going to bring this practice to a pause for now. You can return to a practice like this and continue this until the resolution is complete. We're in a group, so some of you, maybe it feels complete, others would maybe need more relationship, more time. So what we'll do is you can thank your parts, send them a little sunshine, and then we're going to pause here, and I'm going to invite us, we can go into a breakout. We'll go out into a breakout for 8 minutes to just have some time to debrief a little, share your experience, and then we'll come back as a whole and we'll bring it to a pause. I know maybe we'll also stay longer and have a conversation if we want to, but so whenever you're ready, Kathleen, yeah, thank you.
Breakout sessions are not recorded.
Welcome back. So glad to be back here with you. So I know that we have a sort of a formal pause in a moment, and then there's room for us to continue. So I'll just bring us to a formal pause and just say, thank you so much for your presence. This has been so lovely. I hope that this has had some impact, positive impact in your life. And what I'll just mention, I'll put into the chat that if you want to explore more, I'm just sending over 2 links. One is to a free mini course that just goes a little further into the Lumina process, where you can just explore more and play. And then there's also a deeper training that I'm doing starting March 31st. It's a 3-month deeper dive in a collective learning environment. So those are just there. It's an opportunity for you to check it out, see if there's a bubbling of yes around those things. And with that said, I'll just thank you, and I'll hand it over to maybe, I think Tom maybe, and
Yeah.
and then I'll hang out. I have another half an hour or so for whoever's hanging out, and we can continue exploring if you want.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alexander. I think you know how this was received. You could feel it, and the practices are really amazing. And please put, in addition to the courses, how people might contact you
Yeah,
in the chat.
sure.
So a quick reminder for everyone else is in 2 weeks, we're going to reconvene in the embodiment exploration. So this is one of the rare times we're not waiting 4 weeks. We usually meet the second Saturday every month. We're doing an extra one, the 4th Saturday of this month. So then we'll be back on February 8th. A couple of things.
April, Tom.
Oh, I'm sorry. April 8th.
Yeah, it won't be the 8th probably.
Right.
It'll be the 12th,
It will. Thank
second
you.
Saturday.
So San Diego Integral is looking for members to expand our leadership team. If you feel so inclined to contribute to these wonderful presentations, there's a little bit of footwork and creativity that goes on. ICON is also looking for people to help us build the next conference. If you feel so inclined, there's several people here that are already involved in different committee work and whatnot. Please get a hold of me if you can. And we're going to get into the informal part of this presentation. Please stay. This tends to be the rich part. What struck me is I did this last practice twice so far with Alexander. And what strikes me is when you contrast that with what happened in South Carolina, I believe yesterday, where they executed that man in his 60s. And people that really support that, I wonder what violence they are doing to their ability to be present and their own growth by just endorsing or, God forbid, participating in it. And I got a chance to ask Alexander quickly was his own process, and I know that Eric raised this, his own process of forgiving the man that, and actually feeling the humanity of the man that killed his father, really helped shape some of what we learned in this practice. So I'll leave it right there. There are so many other things like the lenses that he mentioned early on and all the things. So what is striking you? Feel free to just unmute yourself and kind of popcorn style. Let's see what arises.
Well, I actually had a question that came up about the seed and wondering if seeds can be at different levels, like a seed can be have more, one seed can have more nutrients than another, or have one seed might have gone through more hardship or more, through drought or something. Or is this, somebody else mentioned that they thought all our seeds are like are pure essence and there's no difference.
Well, my sense of it is like both of those are true. There's at the essence level, there's what we get is pure essence, but that essence is then interacting with our individual lives. And so there's a variation of what we learn and how we learn. And some lives seem to be carefree. It's an interesting question. It's like I look at my daughter and some of her friends, and many of them have grown up in a Waldorf education, which recognizes that the children have a soul that's on an evolutionary journey, and like this is just a foundational premise of the education. And I'm like, well, what's going to happen to these kids? Like, there's not much like big tension. Are they going to evolve? And from the perspective of listening from a stages of development assessment perspective, indeed they are. But there's a lot more access to this. There's less obstruction, and yet they're still evolving quite quickly for their age, developmentally. So anyway, that's some things that come up for me.
But in a way, they haven't been through that human experience of adversity that you were talking about earlier that seems to polish all of us.
That's right. Exactly. So that's the other side that I think, Eloy, you're also pointing to. It's like, okay, what produces like, depth and maturity over time? And it's those pains, hopefully bumping up against that deeper essence. And that's what I see in these kids is that they have a easier time connecting with that automatic curiosity, so that when the shit hits the fan, they're like, okay. I remember years ago, we let our daughter, she didn't watch TV for a long time because she's a Waldorf kid. We watched the vice presidential debate that was going on. And my wife and I were fairly dysregulated, and we let Sophie watch. And she was just like so grounded and stable and like, these are what adults do? Like, this is ridiculous. There was a way in which she could be with the tension, but her root was secure, which is interesting. I don't know. Maybe a lot of us haven't had that experience based on our upbringing, but there's something there that was like, and then yet, as you're pointing to, Patricia, it polishes. It helps us maybe connect with the preciousness of life, that we know that our breaths are just numbered. And so like, there's something that just says, don't go anywhere, like be here.
And yet the Buddha was someone that grew up in a completely, as much as the world could give the Buddha, that perfect environment. So who knows?
I really appreciated the invitation to think about what happened in South Carolina yesterday. I'm a little shocked in a certain way that it came into this conversation, but it also feels quite poignant, and like this group seems to be ready for that conversation or sharing around what emerged in you.
I can see why Tom brought it up, because it does tie in with the opening story Alexander gave us about its father's murderer too.
No, I didn't have a answer to it, but as I'm thinking about it, to project at that level and to feel justified that he deserves to die at that moment is to really strengthen something that's insidious in all of us. You know, the idea of projection, and which means you can't take ownership for your own shadow, your own unconscious. And there can't be empathy. There can't be forgiveness. That to feel that entitled to project that hard and not have, mixed feelings. I mean, I struggle enough with my own projection as it is that I'm not for the death penalty. I just think it's hubris. So that's my initial thought.
Well, and as I'm listening, what comes up for me is, there's a sense of almost like, oh, well, this person is never going to change. And so we might as well sort of assess what they've done and then just assume that they don't need more time. With Herbert, when he first went into prison, he was 18. I was about 20, he was about 18. We were both similar age. He was very violent when he was in there. The first 4.5 years, he was in solitary confinement for 23.5 hours a day. He taught himself how to read, and he discovered meditation on his own. He needed time. He needed time to become the person who later now looks back and says, oh, I was a baby making man decisions. And even though I think some people don't change, a lot of people can.
Something
So,
that struck
go ahead.
me about, oh, I'm sorry. Well, I happened to read this article, I think in the New York Times, about the fact that this man chose his method of execution. And apparently in South Carolina, there are 3 methods, either lethal injection or the electric chair, which apparently is very old in South Carolina, and you don't know if it's going to work or not. And the third, which is much more unusual, is the firing squad. And I felt like his choosing the firing squad for his own reasons was this thing almost as if the collective could see how violent we are. It's like there's no, oh, the lethal injection, the guy is no more. No, this is almost us coming out of our own shadow of our own violence. That's just how it kind of struck me, as if some agency in this man brought that to our attention.
Yeah, thank you. I feel a lot stirring in response to what's said. Let's see if I can, hold enough composure to speak to it. I'm really intrigued with this sense of how my projections are violent, that to the extent I put someone in that box of unable to change, I can put out there that they're the violent one or whatever, but to recognize my own violence in that, because I am taking something that is so fluid, this human life, and I'm fixating it for whatever I need to imagine that it's fixated. But to really take that on, and what moves me so much, Alexander, about your story is, there was something in the way that you encountered Herbert that, allowed something to emerge in that most people would not allow, probably. They're going to write him off that he's this, and we all have those labels, and I see how I do that with all the places that I put labels on people or imagine they're fixed in some way. And it feels like a real invitation for my own practice to recognize more and more the places that I do that, because I feel in the course of our session today the fluidity. I see that in me, and I can feel it in reverse, to the extent that people might put me in a particular box. They go, oh, that Eric is this, whatever undesirable quality. And it's like, oh, when I feel how that doesn't give me the space to explore the fullness of my being and show up in different ways and to change, then there's an ouch to that. And when I recognize that process in me and flip it around, then I go, how can I be gracious to all beings, and to hold them in a loving embrace and let go of the ideas of they shouldn't be where they are. They're just there for a moment, but it doesn't have to be that way. And in that opening, so many new possibilities are able to rise. And it feels like I come away from today with this sense of like, oh, how can I incorporate this more in my practice to encounter everyone with that graciousness of allowing them to shift and evolve and change as they do, and being okay with, if that's not right for them right now, that I am able to meet that too. That's like, how do I take that on as a way of showing up? Thank you.
I'd like to invite some other voices that haven't spoken yet. Elgin, Griselda, Karen, Edward, Laura, Jesse, Helen, Marjorie. Marjorie asked a question or had a comment earlier, but any of you that haven't spoken, I want to invite you to, because I'm guessing stuff brewing for y'all.
Thanks, Eloy. A lot of stuff came up for me, but just one word in particular kind of popped up is responsibility. Just like, what is in our relations, like what is our like true responsibility to each other and just to everything that we are in context with. And like, where does me, what is like mine, and then what is theirs? And I think that word popped up, and then like kind of like these questions came up, and then also kind of like an answer came up. And I don't know what you guys think about this, is that each of our responsibilities to just act from that wholeness, just that being. And are we responsible for there's another question popping up, are we really responsible for others taking responsibility?
I want to express gratitude, Alexander, and everybody who's here today. I found that the practice with the inner parts really helped me move some things through, like something that's been lingering for over a year that hasn't been resolved. And I found it very helpful because it helped me have compassion for my part, but also for the other person's parts. And I was thinking about something that my sister has told me, and she's not an expert in IFS, but she could be, because sometimes she'll tell me what you see in the other, it's a mirror for yourself. And I don't like that because I don't want to own it. But I think there's some truth to that because it's either past, present, or it could be future. And so just really grateful. And my intention or wish for myself is if I can embody my own values, let's say to act from a place of love, then there will not be place for violence, internal or external. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to share what's coming up with me. I'm not comfortable with what's coming up with me. And Tom, you brought it up you put it in my face like a Three Stooges pie of the man that we shot in South Carolina yesterday. Looking at it, usually I'm able to make peace with the Trumpians and the stuff they're doing. You know, there's an arc, and we go back and forth, and ultimately, I do have a belief it's going to come out in a good place after some difficulties, but right now I'm not able to get exactly there. It occurs to me that the only way we can shoot this man in South Carolina is if he's not us. I'm not him. He's not us. Kill him. And it's really hard right now for me to think of this man, this Zelensky, coming to America and trying to explain his side of the horror going on. As I saw it, as I saw what he was doing, is, hey, wait, we try this and it doesn't work. We try to make an agreement, it's not working. Can you see it from our point of view? That's what I was hearing him say. And what the response is, no, you're not kissing my ass. So I'm going to not only give you no more weapons, I'm also not going to tell you anything about what the enemy is doing to you. And you will be blind as well as unarmed because you didn't treat me with the respect I deserve. To kill babies for that reason, that's very hard for me right now. To kill the man in South Carolina because he's not us and he did something wrong, that's hard for me right now. And Alexander, I've done some work with you before, and how you masterfully bring a problem with somebody out there in here, and I negotiate with that part of me that person represents in here. It's very, very helpful to bring it here instead of there. But I'm just seeing this behavior of Trump and our government in South Carolina, and chainsaws, how wonderful and mirth, full of joy and mirth it is to destroy lives. That's hard for me to identify with right now. I don't like that I'm not identifying with it, but it's hard. So I'm just sharing that.
David?
Yes, I wanted to share about the process for me. And I'm also noticing I'm quite activated by hearing about the execution. I've been out in the woods and didn't know about it. And yeah, I've really had to work to calm myself through tapping. So I'm just prefacing that with what I'm about to share because it's pulling me out. So I went pretty deep in this process. I've worked with Alexander on and off for a couple of years. And what I noticed today, though, and this is the part I want to bring, and maybe So the process, I believe, is to be able to do it on our own. Alexander's guided me over the years. But this time was the first time that I believe that I saw the part of the other person I was in conflict with within me. And it was actually my dad, who's very nurturing. And we don't really have conflict, but the conflict in our relationship is all within me. He's 87, he's very loving. But the conflict flashed back until I was 5 or 6 when he drove around with me drunk in a truck. And there was deep forgiveness from this whole process when I really embodied that part. I even thought about you, Alexander, with Herbert. And I think Eloy actually articulated the part, he was in my group, where it's not about getting that other person to change. And I can't really change my dad back in 1970. He's a different man. But there was some deep forgiveness, and there was a healing, and that part was actually being heard. That younger part of me was like it was being heard by my dad back in 1970 in some ways. So that's what I wanted to share.
Beautiful. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Wheaton, for both of what you shared. Beautiful.
I think for me, what's coming up is a recognition that the complexity of what's happening requires a both and an either or at the same time to be able to see everything from a non-dual, unconditional love, and at the same time take a stand for the good and against the evil, to stop the hemorrhaging, to stop the harm, to do everything in my power to stand for the good, because the healing cannot come in the midst of ongoing harm that's left unchecked. So I think it's just speaking to the complexity of the whole thing. Yeah, thank you.
I'm asking myself a lot of questions right now about, how people talk about when numbing out to mass shootings, it's becoming commonplace. And I'm wondering because I can imagine what it was like for Alexander to meet this guy face to face and the grieving they both had to go through. And when we don't grieve these things, they become externalized. And I'm wondering, is that the process of numbing out? And why we seem to just be going back there again and again, that we don't want to do that work. We don't want to grieve it at that level. So like I said, I'm asking myself these questions.
Well, it brings
They're
up for me,
thickening the skin, huh?
yeah, it brings up for me, Tom, where we met on February 25th, and Herbert didn't know that that was the day. I mean, he was 18, he was coming off being high, he was, not what he is today. And the thing that was really interesting in our conversation this time, first was just, for him to feel the impact of, oh shit, like, because it's anything that's scheduled, it's initiated by me. So it's like, oh shit, like you scheduled this conversation today, on this day. But because there wasn't any of that stagnant blood fruit between us, right? The history isn't in between us. That's been cleared. There is room for us to be sad together. It's sad for him. I mean, I'm not going to go into it now, but like you hear his childhood, it's like, well, no wonder that's how he, like the place he ended up in. His childhood was the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. And so there is some way in which that like we could be sad together. We could be sad for him. We could be sad for me. And what an interesting, odd, beautiful thing to have happen. Like it's like there's not quite a track in my brain for like that to already exist, but it's what happened.
I'm curious, Alexander, if how this all unfolded with, there was an interweaving of the process of working with Herbert and coming up with this teaching that you have, if they were co-evolving or if one, you figured out one thing and then that led to the other.
I mean, for me, parts work has been something that's probably helped me be able to reach out to him in the first place. And, you know, like with all of us, whatever work we're doing is always evolving. And certainly Herbert has had a role in that. But I think it was more the parts work really supported, like learning how to be, like come from wholeness and like see the good in him. And I was the first person, I learned this after our first conversation. I was the first person that ever told him he was good. You just have to look a little deeper. You know, just because it seems like people are made of skin doesn't mean that they're made of just skin, you know?
I had a couple thoughts if I could share. I don't know if they'll be coherent at all, but it was asked why it's so difficult to do this inner work or this parts work, and I think it just comes down to the fact that we don't want to admit that the pain is within us. Even though it kind of makes me laugh, it's kind of funny because the pain that we're feeling obviously is in us. But somehow we're able to project that out into the world and think, oh no, the pain is coming from outside, even though the pain is within us. And I actually had an insight this morning when I woke up that I know I have seen the truth, all the levels of the truth, when I'm laughing. Because until I laugh, there's still some pain there. There's still some truth that I don't want to look at. But whenever I get to the real truth, I am just laughing. I'm laughing at all the suffering that I experienced because I couldn't let go of my ego or, you know, whatever it is, my beliefs and the way I thought things should be. You know, it's just, I look back and just go, oh, that was so cute. I was so cute. And I suffered so much because I just didn't want to let go of that, you know, and now I can just laugh about it. So, you know, so many things I can laugh at, but there's this one thing that I really, really want to let go of, and I haven't been able to. And so I really worked on it yesterday. And then this morning I woke up and because I'm kind of asking myself, like, when am I going to be done with this? When is this going to stop haunting me? You know, this pain. And this morning, that was my insight, was when I can laugh about it, then I'll know the pain is gone. And I've seen the truth fully. So thank you.
Laura, what you said, I love it. It made me think of a saying from some Zen tradition or other, that one of the signs that you have genuinely reached an enlightenment breakthrough is that you cannot stop laughing for the rest of the day. That's what came up for me while you were talking.
Well, good, T. I wasn't the only one.
About Jerry, Edward, or John?
Well, I will feel I'll fill in a little bit. The one experience I had where I could not stop laughing for the rest of the day was when I was on retreat with my guru, and I had one of those, I think, Kensho type openings where I kind of saw, like in 5 dimensions, the universal mind. I mean, it was a big whammy for a moment, of course. And what landed was, I'm wrong about everything. It was so clear. I am wrong about it's like 50 pounds rolled off each shoulder. I literally felt enlightened. I felt 100 pounds lighter. It's just by the nature, our little intellects only see such a small part of such a big picture. Even if we're seeing it accurately, it's like a tiny tile in a vast mosaic. So by definition, we're not seeing the whole picture, and we think it is by definition. And it was like such a relief that I don't have to struggle to be right and figure out what's real and what's I'm wrong anyway. Ha 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 ha. I really couldn't stop laughing for the rest of the day. It's just our little but when we put our pieces together in wee spaces like this and we're open, and that's part of the beauty of Integral to me with gatherings like this, that a larger space opens for all of us and we can be vulnerable and open to being wrong, and then open to being right, and open to being us. I love this.
Alexander, Laura asks, how can you laugh at tragedy, trauma?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's going to be a different answer for each person. You know, we all have our shifting prisms, and you know, the way that I go with the question is I sort of open up the domain of laughter to include other things like open-heartedness, unbounded love. It may not always, for me personally, it may not always come out as laughter. It brings me into the notion of what can compassion be? And I think a lot of times compassion is used as a synonym for being nice or being kind, which is great. But to me, compassion is a process more than an emotion, where I feel the tragedy, I let the tragedy in, and then I feel it as my own. And then I allow love to transmute that. And maybe sometimes I'll laugh, not at the tragedy, but I'll laugh at just the fact that that possibility can even happen. But more often for me, it feels like being soaked in love, feeling both the weight of the tragedy and the recognition that it's always only been love anyway. With the same, I love the both and either or invitation. While I can do that and I can recognize that even the tragedy is love, I can also take a stand and say, hell no, we're not going to stand for this. But from a place that can laugh. I guess for me, it's not a laughing at, if there's laughing at all. And sometimes when it comes to tragedy, maybe there's, I don't know. For me, there's usually a different tone than laughter, but there's room for it.
Can I share a thought about that, since I'm the one that brought it up?
Yeah, I love it, by the way, Laura. So I hope what I'm saying is in no way an antithesis.
No, not at all. Not at all. I appreciate your perspective. But for me, I'm not laughing at the tragedy. You know, I lost a child, and of course I would never laugh about that, even though we joke about it all the time, me and my kids, because it's ours. You know, we own that. And it's a way that we bond. Of course, we're not laughing at what happened, but we're laughing at how naive we were and how our perspective was so clouded. Just like, you know, like I said, like looking back at myself as if I was a little child, and I was so naive and I was so adorable and I was so innocent and I was trying so hard to do the right thing, and I was so wrong. And that's what's so funny, That's what's so funny, is that I could have been trying so hard and I could have seen everything so upside down. And so for me, that's what it comes down to, is just laughing at how adorable I was and how much I was just really how hard I was trying and how much I wanted to hold on to my version of reality, when there's always another way to look at it. Like, we're just never can see. I think you were talking about this earlier. There's so many truths out there. There's so many perspectives. There's, an infinite number of perspectives. For me to think that this one perspective had to be right, and I was going to hold on to it till till the day I died. That's what's so funny, is how determined I am, how stubborn I am. It's so cute.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm just going to say that it's time for me to go. I have my daughter and Veronica, my partner. It's time for me to go be with them. Please continue. And I just want to say thank you. It's been such a gift. I feel very deeply moved and enbrightened. So thanks for everything that all of you have brought into the conversation.
Lots of thanks are coming your way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll hang out for a little bit more if you want, but probably more than likely we're winding down now.
Bye.
Okay. Anybody have anything else they'd like to?
I just wanted to say, for me, the laughter and the tears, or the pain and the suffering and the joy, these are all, two sides of the same coin, so to speak. So the potential for all of it is happening simultaneously. And then one other thing about the forgiveness of someone who has done such harm. It's much easier to get to that place of forgiveness when that person has come to a place of accountability and apologized, and that sort of thing, when they have actually transformed and changed. But if they're still acting out and they're still doing what they were doing before unchecked, then it's very, very difficult to come to that place of acceptance. Not impossible, just much harder.
Yeah, I think that we talked about that one of the breakouts too, is that, and I've heard other forgiveness things too, is it's really not about what happens with the other person. It's how we deal with it in our own hearts, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we can't, if forgiveness was dependent on what the other person did, or whether they changed or not, you'd be carrying that, for a lot of people for a long time.
Yeah, so you can forgive and at the same time hold accountable, or to insist on stopping the harm, to the extent that you have that power to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, Marjorie, that's a really big issue for me these days. And one of the things I'm starting to try to translate to my Unitarian Universalist Progressive Church, I'm kind of help them get on board with integral. And to me, one of the distinctions between Wilber's first tier and second tier is when we take judgment and replace it with discernment. So what you were talking about, Marjorie, and earlier, the discernment to see if somebody is still doing harm and needs to be stopped, to have the resolution to take skillful action and prevent more harm from happening. But then it's the judgment, blame, and resentment, that cycle that we tend to, as long as first tier tends to see, oh, you're the problem, you're to blame, judge, blame, resentment, and that leads to, people getting executed in front of firing squads, retributive justice instead of restorative justice. But I'm working on this kind of like mantra: replace judgment with discernment, because we do need to see what's skillful and what's not, and take action, forceful if necessary. But then replace the resentment, the judgment, the blame. There has to be accountability. You know, if
Mhm.
people have done harm, this is like the 12 steps. You know, we try to make good for the harm we've done. And then instead, if we can do that, then instead of adjustment, blame, the resentment becomes compassion. And so kind of turning, this is to me is one of the hinges between first tier and second tier.
Yes.
And the compassion comes in. For me, what helps is really having internalized the teaching of karma, to see, and this came up many times today, to see what drives people to do these things, what kinds of childhoods they had, and the understanding if I had had the same childhood that that person did, I would be acting out in the same way.
Mhm. Exactly.
That could so easily be me. And how would I want the world to be holding me if I were in a trap like that? So that's these are the ideas that I've been wrestling with. This is a very rich
Mhm.
conversation this evening.
Yeah. There's a,
Mhm.
are you guys familiar with the poem by Thich Nhat Hanh, Call Me by My True Names?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, then I won't repeat it, but it's very good. He's basically saying whatever this person did or that could be me, given if I grew up in the same circumstances, and
Right.
I could be just as bad as that person, or I could have been anyway.
I think Ken Wilber puts it something like, no one is so smart to be right 100% of the time, and no one is so stupid to be wrong 100% of the time. And he says, you know, all perspectives, and I take it to mean all people are true but partial. Everything is true but partial. So being able to see, even within the person that must be stopped, there is good in that person somewhere, somehow, you know. So not only am I wrong, but I'm also right, you know, and so is the other person. I think Ken Wilber even said at one time, everyone is right.
Anybody else?
Which means we're all right some of the time.
Yeah. Like that broken clock that's right twice a day.
Twice a day.
Something came up for me when it comes to suffering. I guess the question was something like, or it was more of like something to contemplate on. What if the suffering that is in our world, or like people kind of think that, oh, you know, this world is suffering. What if we see that as an opportunity to see the suffering within us and get to meet that part of us? So it's like an opportunity to become more whole, to become introduced to more wholeness.
You know, I was sharing in the breakout that invitation to see the part of that other person in you. That was like, no. But then the parts that he said after that made it more of an invitation than a resistance. Because it was about getting to wholeness, you know, like it'd be like trying to be whole without integrating all the shadow parts. And anyone else? Okay, shall we call it a night?
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you,
so
Eli.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
This was
Thanks,
wonderful.
Marjorie, Claire.
It was
Thanks,
really
Thank
great.
you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
For further information, including upcoming events, resources, links to our Facebook and Meetup pages, and our fabulous donate button, please visit our website at sandiegointegral.org. Donations are greatly appreciated and help us to continue to provide information and connection within the Integral community.